Today, we're going to be talking about the November Vaughan real estate market stats, provincial federal government policies that affect you as the homeowner and home buyer. And we're going to be talking about the Bank of Canada interest rate announcements. Let's get started. So first off, the provincial government policy, there's 3 additional dwellings, right? 3 total dwellings per household that's been legalized by the provincial government, right? So you got the main floor here, which has always been, a dwelling, but you also got the basement and also the backyard, right? So this is interesting to note because the provincial government goal is to improve and increase housing supply. Okay. Now, my argument really is, does the basement dwelling actually matter? Because the people that wanted to rent out their basements have done so already. Okay. The backyard dwelling, though, is very interesting. We'll see if people will like to live there. I'm assuming they will. Now, this is stepping over the toes of municipal governments, right? So the municipal governments, they do enforce this. But now, since the provincial government superseded them, there's going to be a lot of friction and tension between those two. Okay. Now, how are they going to recoup the lost revenue? We'll see. Now, the second component for the provincial government is the home buyer tax of 25%, right? So if you're not a Canadian citizen, you don't have your PR status, right, then you will need to pay 25% tax. Okay. Now, the third thing I want to talk to you about the Ford government is the controversial, conservation, building on conservation area land, right? Is it a big issue? Well, you know what? I understand both sides. You want one side of the hand, you want to build homes. The other side, you want to preserve the little nature that we do have, right? And let's assume that, one of the arguments I'm getting is that, the builders are wealthy, and they are, don't get me wrong. But should they have gotten a back end deal and purchased the land of the conservation areas? Right. And you need to think, as a home buyer, right? If the government did not do this, if they opened up the bidding process, okay, and they allowed everyone to bid on the property, on land, okay, what are they going to do? Right? What are these other home buyers going to do? Right? Are they going to build homes for people to live in, or are they going to hold on to it and hope someone else to buy them out? Right? Likely it's going to be the latter. So I've talking to many homeowners. That's what they're doing. There's, projects that are happening near their neighborhood, and they're holding on, hoping that the builder buys them out. The builders are naturally just going to pass the cost to you as the buyer. Okay. So is it really a bad thing? Now the federal government policy is that, they are banning foreign buyers starting January for up to 2 years. Okay. And is there a workaround? Sure. Right. I'm not going to get into that, but there are workarounds. And even if they do get a workaround, they will need to pay 25% tax. So as a foreign investor, would you want to invest in Ontario that badly, or would you rather go other provinces like Alberta, Calgary, maybe buy some property in Calgary as well, right? So that will have a damper on demands for sure. Now, the one thing that we should look at too is the Toronto vacant real tax. Okay. You might be wondering, Alex, I live in Markham, how does this affect me? Well, it can, right? Not saying it will necessarily, but it can. So the rule is this, right? Starting in 2023 January, Toronto is requiring homeowners to provide evidence that they do not leave that property vacant for up to 6 months. Okay. Otherwise, they will pay a 1% tax on it based on the municipal, records, right? So the home value based on that. So how much you pay taxes on, the 1% of that home value. You notice that as a homeowner, the market price versus the municipal price is very different, right? And will other municipalities implement this? They see Toronto generating additional revenue, right? They may want to do that as well, especially how they are losing control on how many dwellings a household can have. But the question really is, how will Toronto enforce this? Okay. It's one thing to have rules, and it's another thing to enforce. Okay. Another thing we need to talk about is China and the global chain supplies, right? So in the past, the government would shut down neighborhoods for COVID cases and even businesses for a very long amount of period of time. Okay, 2 weeks, even on towards a month. Okay, now China has begun to ease COVID restrictions in general because of the public unrest, and this will stabilize their economy and also improve global supply chain. Okay, hopefully this will lead to lower prices. Okay, but we will see. Now, moving on to the Bank of Canada, right? Now, they recently announced interest rates hike of half points or 50 basis points. Okay. And they said on their website that in Canada, GDP growth in the third quarter was stronger than expected, and the economy continued to operate in excess demand. So Canada's labor market remains tight with unemployment near historic lows. Okay. So what they're saying is it's still too high, and they're going to likely raise interest rates again in January based on that comments, right? The second component on their website, it said that, however, inflation is still too high and short-term inflation is expectations remain elevated. The longer that consumers and businesses expect inflation to be above the target, the greater the risk that elevated inflation becomes entrenched. So long term. Now, it's interesting to state that because they're the ones that keep saying inflation is still too high, and they're telling our expectations that is very high already. Okay, so they're entrenching it already, so the prices are remaining high. So I'm just confused about that comment. If you can clarify, let me know. So now let's get started with the Vaughan real estate market updates broken down by home type. Now, again, this is not a direct reflection on your home. It's actually, there are other factors you need to consider: the location, the finishes and upgrades, the age of the home, etc. Now, if you want more of a specific home valuation, contact me. I'll be happy to schedule an appointment. So let's get started. Vaughan real estate market in November 2022, the sales was 197, active listings 588, average price 1.359%. Okay, it did go up by 9% on a month-to-month basis. Okay, and it is still a seller's market. Okay, of 2.98. So anything less than 5 is an actual seller's market. From 5 to 6 is a balanced market, and from 6 onwards is a buyer's market. Now, the days on market stay no change on a month-to-month basis of 23 days. Okay. Now, if you compare it to pre-pandemic numbers, right, it still took longer back then, 28 days to sell a home, despite prices being up by 34%. All right. So you can see the market has changed quite a bit when it comes to sale prices. And if you look at the February 2022 figures, I know that everyone's, panicking a 15% decrease. Okay. But if you look at other types of asset classes, like the stock market and the crypto market, it actually outperformed both of them significantly. Right, the Nasdaq actually went down by 26%, and the crypto market dropped by 78%. Now we're comparing November to November. Okay, now if you look at our numbers, the November figures, it's actually outperformed them significantly. And even if you compare it by February, the all-time highs in real estate, it still outperformed them. Right, so it's good to put things into perspective. Okay, now for detached homes in Vaughan, right? Number of transactions, 109. Active listings, 273. Okay. Average price is 1.74 million. A 5% increase, by the way, on a month-to-month basis. And the type of market, it's still a seller's market. Okay. And it took one less additional day to sell in November. So what does this say to me is that, there are less sales that are happening on a February, figure, right? February had 207 sales, 47% difference. But if you look at the number of active listings, right, you need to consider that, right? When people say the market's crashing, my question then is, how do you know, right? Because it's always about supply and demand, right? And we can see that by the type of market, it's still significantly favoring the seller, okay? If it was the other way around, if there was a lot more buyers and a lot more sellers on that matter, right? A lot more listings, right? Then there would be more of a balanced market or even a buyer's market, and then prices would naturally been dropping. But we hadn't been seeing that. Okay. So for semi-detaches here, right, in Vaughan, number of sales 15, active listings 20, average price of 1.1 million. It's a 3% decrease on a month-to-month basis, okay, and a 25% decrease on an all-time high, okay. But if you look at pre-pandemic numbers, you're still up by about 28%. All right, and the type of market, it's still a very favorable seller's market here, and it took 6 additional days to sell a semi-detached in Vaughan. So for townhouses in Vaughan, right, 17 sales, 52 listings available, average price of 1.196 million. And the type of market, it is transitioning more to of a balanced market, okay? And it's taking 5 additional days to sell on a month-to-month basis. Now, if you compare it to, number of sales across all the periods of time that we're looking at, right, it's still less sales November versus any other time period, okay? All-time high, it was about a 75% decrease, okay? Even pre-pandemic numbers is about 55% less, 38 sales at that time, okay? And again, prices still gone up though, right? If you compare pre-pandemic numbers of 871,000, right? So don't worry about, your neighbors selling a higher price than you do if they sold like, in February, March, April, because you know what, you're still well ahead. And for condo townhouses, right, you got to look at these numbers and put them in context, right? There's only 8 transactions that happened, which is why there is a heavily significant price fluctuations. Okay, so 8 transactions versus 4. Active listings stayed the same, but the prices dropped by 15%. So you may think, oh my goodness, the market's crashing, but in reality, again, there's only 8 transactions, guys. Like, come on, we need more data to go through with this. Okay, now again, the type of market, it was a buyer's market at the time of last month, but now it transitioned to more of a seller's market. And it's taking 17 additional days to sell on a month-to-month basis, okay? If you compare all-time highs, it was 30 days less, okay, to sell a condo townhouse in Vaughan, and they did sell more, 20 transactions, all right? Now, the prices were higher, a little over 1,024,000, right? Now, for condo apartments, right, there are 48 transactions, 205 active listings, average price is 718,000. And the type of market, it's definitely creeping up to more of a balanced market. It's very close. Okay, now days on market, 3 less days to sell. It takes to sell on a month-to-month basis. If you look again, though, pre-pandemic numbers, right, in terms of sales, it's pretty similar, right? 55 transactions versus 48. There were less listings available, though. And despite this, the prices went up by 21%. So it's really interesting to note that, basic economics says, supply and demand, right? Prices go up, demand should go down. But that's not necessarily the case here, as we can see on the 2 different time periods, okay? A lot has happened and a lot has changed, and we need to adjust as real estate professionals and also homeowners and home buyers. Okay, and if you have any questions, please let me know. Make sure if you like this video, share it, subscribe, and talk to you soon. Bye-bye.